You're listening to Nakedly Examined Music, a podcast about songs and songwriters. My name is Mark Lintonmeyer. My guest for episode 249 is Kavus Torabi. He made his name in the London math rock scene in the 90s with his band Monsoon Bassoon. He eventually joined the Cardiacs. In their final lineup, you're right now hearing Ditzy Scene, a 2007 single that he co-wrote with Cardiac's leader Tim Smith, before Tim's health made that band unable to continue. As that was falling apart, he put together a solo project which eventually became his band Knifeworld. And while that was going on, in 2014 he joined the legendary prog-rock band dating back to the 60s, Gong. After one album with them, the leader of that band, David Allen, passed away, and with David's blessing, Kavus became the new lead singer. Gong has just released their 6th album featuring Kavus, Bright Spirit Haulix. So we'll be talking about the song Stars in Heaven from that record. Then we'll talk about a Knifeworld song from 2014, Send Him Seaworthy, from their 2nd out of 4 albums, The Unraveling. Kavus has also released 2 albums under his own name. We'll discuss You Broke My Fall from the first of those albums, 2020's Hip to the Jag. And we'll say goodbye by listening to Wise Guy, the 1998 single by the Monsoon Bassoon. That was his first real taste of success. Now, Kavus has been in several other bands. He's collaborated with retired snooker player Steve Davis to host a radio show and then released several albums as the Utopia Strong. For the rest of Kavus' story, you should just look him up on Wikipedia. And he has bandcamp.com pages for his own name, for Gong, for Knifeworld, and for the Utopia Strong. So find more of his music there. For more about this podcast, please see nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. To support the effort and get an ad-free feed and my detailed notes on the songs you're going to hear, go to patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. I will play a little bit of Ditzy Scene, the 2007 single by the Cardiacs, the last gasp of that band before the singer was unable to operate, but eventually was released, the whole album, in 2025, right?
That's right, yep.
We're going to get pretty quickly to the new stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of things way before the Cardiacs. We're going to hear at the end some of the Monsoon Bassoon. We wanted to get right to the current thing that you're promoting, which is the new Gong album, Stars in Heaven, the single that I had picked off of that. Yeah, do you want to say anything about this sort of journey briefly, getting to Gong here?
It's been a really crazy journey. I mean, I've always wanted to play music. I was doing band at school. Well, I left school, I started my own band, which we toured mildly a little bit, made cassette EPs, that sort of thing.
That was the Die Laughing, the metal band?
That was Die Laughing, yeah.
I just heard that today. I discovered the SoundCloud that had some of these old things that, and you're not singing, because there's a singer that sings like this.
Exactly, that was not me singing. And then, moved up to London, did a new band with one of the guys from Die Laughing, Dan. And really, that band was the Monsoon Bassoon. And I think that first single we put out, the first single we ever done, was in 1998, Wise Guy. I mean, that band, but particularly that song, because it felt like we really found ourselves in that song. And I feel like that song really kick-started the next 30, 35 years of my musical career. And without going through all the different bands and projects and records that I've made, I think that I can definitely hear a through line between what we found with Wise Guy and what I brought to Gong and what maybe Gong is doing or has been doing for about the last 10 years. I definitely hear the DNA that we started back in 98 in kind of most of what I do, really. But I'm now really down to 3 main projects, including Gong. It's Gong, my solo stuff, and a band called the Utopia Strong. And those are really, since about 2018, these have really been my 3 main focuses. And each one has a very different way of working, but I'm able to put myself completely into each one, and each one has different results, but I can feel as much of myself in all 3 of those things. But it's been quite a crazy path getting there, which includes Cardiacs and band Knifeworld and Guapo and a few other things as well.
Do you have a few words to say about Stars in Heaven before they hear it?
Stars in Heaven's from the new Gong album, Bright Spirit. This song, I would say, came largely from the drummer, Cheb Nettles. He brought this tune, or the basis of it, and then we worked on the arrangement together. He had a vocal melody for it, but I just couldn't really make it work for me. So I modified the melody a bit and wrote the words, but the starting point for this one was a Cheb tune. It just has a very up vibe, and I wanted to write a lyric that felt justified, that almost like the classic nature of the tune. I wanted to write something that felt sort of universal lyrically, and that's what sort of birthed this one.
Assembling, bright spirit trembling, the sun and moon like gold and silver leaf. Swept down the wind I hasty, from my desires they chase me. Arms and wonders fill my gaze. In passion stars are falling, heavenly voices calling, set my weary heart ablaze. Part of me doesn't care if all the stars in heaven fell into the earth. It's a lonely, lonely world now anyway. But I wouldn't dare waste a moment from my death back to my birth. Every breath we get's a miracle, I say.
So very, very high energy wall of sound here. I'm surprised there's not more instrumental to it, right? That I'm just hearing basically two guitars, bass and drums, but then, horns come in and things later. But it seems you get a lot of oomph out of that. Are you playing both guitars, or you have another guitarist in the band at this point?
No, there's another guitar player, Fabio Golfetti. He does the solo on this one as well. We both have very different styles, so it's nice in Gong. Whatever we come up with, they seem to fit together nicely, but I'm much more of an angular sort of player. He's much more of a sort of rounded, sort of curvy player, if you will.
So he's doing the little chimey stuff.
I think we both are.
Oh, okay.
We're both doing that chimey stuff.
Well, there was a sort of chimey lead, and then I wrote dreamy, tinny chords. It seems like if if you're playing while singing, that's probably you're doing the rhythm, I say in quotes. But
the way I play, because I'm kind of wired up weird, is I tend to sing while playing the angular stuff.
Okay.
That's really been something that I've always done. I've always been able to, sometimes even play in a different meter. I could be, I've done sometimes where you're sort of playing in 5/8 or playing in 7/8 on the guitar, but singing in 4/4 over the top of it. So that's just something I've kind of, going right back actually to when I really first started doing stuff in my teens, I've just always drawn towards doing that kind of thing.
let me play the first little break here, 37 seconds. These little melody parts, were these things that Ched was coming in with, or these are things that you were adding, or the fact that I'm hearing the horn as the main thing doing it? Is everybody writing their own parts? How arranged?
Basically, it was like Ched came in with like the chords and the melody, and then we came up with a sort of all together the arrangement around it, and each of us would write different melodic parts. The da 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 da. I can't remember if that was Ched or me or it was Ian. That's what happens with Gong, is that we'll have this basis of something, and then we'll all sort of alter it and add to it and subtract from it until we end up with what we end up with.
And is this all done basically in a rehearsal room, or are you making demos and sending them to each other?
It's done in a rehearsal room. On this album, in fact, we operate slightly different. The way we've often worked in the past is that really whatever gets come up with in the environment of being together, that's what we work on. So that's what becomes Gong. I tend to generate a lot of ideas and a lot of song ideas. So if I'm doing that in the presence of the other guys, then that's what we work on. And what's good about that is that you don't have enough time to get kind of attached to what you've written and then start feeling pressures about it, because you've just come up with it. So you just come up with this idea, then everybody starts, well, maybe we could repeat that, or everyone starts playing along. What was a bit different about this album is because we didn't have time to do that initially. We were under more of a deadline. This one, it was a case of going home and writing stuff and bringing it to the band. So in the case of at least 2 songs on the album, what I did is I did not exactly a demo, because I stopped doing demos anyway because I think they're a bad idea, which I can talk about later on. But what I would do with a demo normally, certainly with my old band, Knifeworld, is that I would record all the parts, or else I would play the parts like on a keyboard or something so everyone could hear what their parts are. But that's not how Gong works. So in terms of doing a demo, for some of these tunes, all I did is I just recorded my guitar part and my voice and then presented it to them so that they can come up with their own parts over that.
Sure.
But as I said, the downside to that being, as did happen this time around, I started to get quite attached to some of the way I was thinking about things and start thinking a little bit more, I don't want to say rigidly, but you become more precious about the tunes, which caused a little bit of anguish. And I think the same thing with Cheb with Stars in Heaven is that, he had an idea about how he wanted this song to go, and then once it comes to the band, that gets changed. Certainly in terms of, the vocal melody, I just couldn't make his melody work for me. So I modified it. So that can be a bit difficult if you brought the idea in. So I think for me in Gong anyway, I think it's better, whatever we get over the line in the end, we always make sure we're 100% with. But I think the process of making it is more enjoyable when everything is just born in that one space together, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think this album proved that we could do it the other way as well.
Well, let me play the section right after the one I played. So this is a verse.
Brave suns are waiting, lights radiating inside me. Are you out?
Obviously, there's odd time signatures. Is it 7/4 for the main refrain, and then it's like 7/8 for this section or something?
I think it's in 5, isn't it? I mean, honestly, I just feel them all. That's the funny thing. It all sounds like 4/4 to me. It all sounds like, I don't think of this one as being in a funny meter, but
that's the masterful use of odd time signatures. Is it, even if it's take 5 or something? Well, then you're still establishing a groove, and they're still doing 4/4 type gestures. It's just we're gonna skip a beat at the end of something, or a half a beat.
I mean, that's something I've always been into. I've always been into playing in unusual meters, not as a deliberate thing. I just tend to write in kind of 5s and 7s or 11s and 13s and stuff. Not to say that I don't write in 4, 6 and 9 as well, but, I do like unusual meters, and I do like playing polyrhythms over them. So do the rest of the guys in Gong. And as it turns out, Gong has a history of that. So if anything, I think this was maybe a good reason or one of the reasons, good thing for David Allen to get me into the band, is I'd already been into doing this kind of thing. So we're a band that really likes doing that, and we're a band that feels comfortable doing it with it. But I think you will hear certainly in prog, or in certain types of prog, you'll hear like, it's almost like sometimes playing in an unusual meter, it like gets underlined and put in capital letters, and it gets a bit too, almost like it's trying to prove a point. So I like the slippery nature of an unusual meter, but I like it to feel like it grooves. I never want it to feel like it's like deliberately obtuse or deliberately awkward. So like you said, yeah, it's about trying to make everything sound like it was in 4/4 sort of thing.
The change in tone between the main refrain, which is sort of almost a big show tune anthem, sort of, arena rock, and then we have this kind of light little da 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 da, and we had the little, we had the transition of the da 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 to get us between these. Yet it doesn't seem like the lyrics don't change in tone. It's still this sort of flowery. You tell me. I mean, was it just Ched brought in these two sections, and you were trying to come up with a tone that would work between them? Or
it's funny hearing it analysed like this, because this feels like kind of what we do. Mm-hmm. He sort of came in with these sections, some worked, some didn't work, and we just assembled them and moved them around, and all between the five of us got this song. I mean, I can't quite sort of remember what the process was. I mean, it just felt like this is how we sort of do stuff. It just sounds like, oh yeah, that's how the verse goes, and that's how the bridge goes, and that's how the chorus goes, sort of thing.
Well, just in terms of the lyrics themselves, so the second half of the refrain sort of makes sense tonally to me. The I wouldn't dare waste a moment, every breath we get's a miracle, this sort of lust for life grabbing, but then why would you care if all the stars in heaven fell into the thing you actually lead off with? It's all cold and lonely. Tell us about those two sentiments put together.
It's me talking to myself. I mean, we all have our tragedies, and I've had a pretty tough few years, and it's me reminding myself, one point in my recent past, I felt just utterly dejected, just really, really like I couldn't see the point. Of course, you've got to find a way through it. It beats the alternative, of not finding a way through it and giving up. It's me talking to myself that you can take the attitude of, why would you care if all the stars, that it's a cold and lonely world, but come on, is it? You're really going to let these things like define who you are? So it's a conversation with myself. I don't know if that, I mean, if it's not obvious, that's also fine. I like that it sets up a premise and then returns it with positivity rather than the other way around.
Well, and it's all, very sort of classical poetry. You guide my vessel, brave suns are waiting, lights radiating. I'm wondering what the sort of tone and philosophy, right? Obviously, Rush had a very specific point of view. Yes, maybe you don't know what their lyrics are, but they're all very like, oh, we worship the sun kind of thing.
I will defend John Anderson's lyrics. I really will. If we get, right, as ludicrous as they are, I also feel like, yeah, well, fair enough.
They're wonderful tonally.
And that amazing voice doing them, it's just... I mean, I wouldn't have written them, but I'm glad that he did,
But Gong with David, always had a lot more humor in it, and I hear a lot of sort of Syd Barrett in some of the gestures that you do. I don't know if lyrically or just tonally or the sound of your voice. Do you feel like there had to be a continuity, if not in the actual philosophy, but in the tone of the lyrics that you write versus the history of Gong? Like, now I'm in Gong mode in terms of the lyrics, or it's just, you're just doing what you do?
I'd always, or at least, since I was a teenager, written my own lyrics and written music. And increasingly, maybe when I was a teenager, in adolescence, trying to put the world to rights, and I just wasn't very good at trying to put the world to rights. I was not very good at that. So my lyrics became much more personal and more autobiographical, particularly as I got into my 30s. And when I came to Gong, and when I came to fronting Gong and writing the lyrics and having to be the front person, it felt like I couldn't bring my autobiographical lyrics to it, because that's not what Gong's about. Beforehand, it had been, certainly with Knifeworld that I was doing before Gong, that was my band. I was writing all the parts. I was putting myself into everything about it. So I could write about, what had been going on in my life, and I'd been going through some pretty interesting times, so I was able to write about that. But with Gong, it felt not right to Gong to do that. So while it wasn't all of what David did, I mean, David had created the whole Gong mythology with the Octave Doctors and the Pothead Pixies and Planet Gong and, Radio Gnome, Zero the Hero, that thing. And although that's not where he was at when I knew him, and it's not where he was at with Gong, he did have this sort of humorous approach. Now, I'm not really able to do that, or not in a way that I feel would be sincere. It would be kind of bogus if I did it, or if I tried to do it, if I tried to affect the same kind of brilliant wordplay he had. Mm-hmm. I think you would see through it, and I would anyway. I wouldn't be able to be sincere about it. But I didn't want to sort of write necessarily about myself directly or what was going on in my life. So I saw what was at the heart of what David was doing was, the whole kind of Gong concept was inspired by an acid trip and by his mystical visions. I thought, well, I can use Gong then as a platform to sing about my psychedelic visions and my idea of mysticism and my experience of trying to make peace with mortality and trying to get my head around and understand and throw my arms around death, really, and the otherworldly and the magical, and use Gong as a platform for that. And so because of being in Gong, it made me far less self-conscious about that sort of stuff. I used to sort of talk about those sort of things in quite kind of hidden or quite sort of obtuse way, and I've been able to be more upfront about that. And because of that, I think it's made me sort of grow as an artist and as a performer and maybe as a communicator. But in terms of those sort of lyrics, I think generally, well, probably the last few years, but definitely each record I make, not just with Gong, but with my own stuff as well, I think that the lyrics are becoming more sort of, I don't want to say romantic, but more like that kind of language.
Sure.
I love that kind of language to write words with. I like the sound of it to sing. I like the ambiguity of certain phrases, and it has almost like a hymn-like quality, some of it, which I've been getting really into. I've just noticed this being something that's definitely happened in the last 5 to 10 years more, and it's kind of growing, and my words are going in that direction, and I'm just sort of going with them. I don't want to bring them back and make them more matter of fact and real life, because I sort of did that, and it's why I was in my way back then. Now I'm feeling the pull of this kind of language, if you will,
So even though you're not, trying to match David's style, that he, at least in the latter day, was providing some sort of model, and the band provides this venue that it is natural to be able to use flowery, it's this very theatrical, whimsical, high energy, spiritual stuff. Yes. In fact, let me play a little of the instrumental break. I mean, just the name Gong, right? It sounds like you're going to play a gong and have the singing bowl and things like that. But this section reminded me of that. So beautiful sitar-like kind of run. I assume that's you doing that.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Well, the bam ba 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 da ba 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 ba. That's Fabio playing that, and it's me doing the kind of sitar-y bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he thought about that moment, choreographing that.
We already had that tune when we went and recorded it. It just felt like, why not? It's sometimes there's something really ostentatious about rock music, I think, and it's like we've already had the stacked up harmonies. We've had this big breezy uplifting sort of like, as you say, almost like power pop kind of vibe. Let's really go for it. So sitar as well. To me, it felt like, if we talk about like humor, that was a humor side to it. It just feels like, yeah, go on then, go on and have it. We're who are we kidding, kind of thing. So yeah, that really makes me smile, that bit.
And the last bit I want to highlight, so getting out of the guitar solo, you got this fast little 7/8 note run and modulate to a new key. Any thoughts on the choice of that key to move to? And
that was the dirty trick.
Okay.
That was a dirty trick. I refer to it, and have been referring to it for the past 30 years, as the dirty trick. And I've almost never used the dirty trick before. The reason I call it a dirty trick, I used to call it like the Eurovision Song Contest trick. What it is you'll have a chorus. You used to get this. Do you know about Eurovision Song Contest?
A little bit, yes.
It's that kind of really corny thing where each country in Europe submits a song and become quite a camp sort of kitschy thing now, but I used to watch it growing up. It was always pretty corny. Or the ABBA won with Waterloo in the late 70s. That was them do. But there used to be something you'd notice in these where the final chorus would always go up a semitone or a tone. And I called it the dirty trick because even the most sort of bland chorus, or even the most sort of very unexciting chorus, if you shift it up by a tone or a semitone, it kind of fools you into thinking, oh, that was nice. Oh, that, and I call it a dirty trick. I would normally avoid it, but when we were
Okay, so
recording,
that is the same key change that is here, because I thought for some reason it was going down, that it was going somewhere else.
No, it goes up. I think it goes from an E to an F. I think is what.
Right.
But when we were going through it in rehearsal, I said, guys, can we just try the dirty trick? Can we do it? It was disputed, but we got it. Me and Cheb agreed as well. But I wanted it to then go back down again. I wanted to go back down to an E for an extra chorus at the end. But it was deemed that's enough. So I got the dirty trick in. But you know what? I'm glad we did, because I've used it very sparingly in my career. But I'm glad we got it through on this one. You wouldn't do it on every song, but it is fun.
So you've mentioned Knifeworld, your solo band. Let's get a second song out on the table there. The one that I picked, Send Him Seaworthy, from the 2014 album The Unraveling. This is a bit longer. Most of the Gong songs are pretty long, but we picked a short one. This one is 6.5 minutes, but of some very accessible Beatlesque kind of melodic gestures, also with the on-time signature, also with some strange tonal changes between verse and various sections, and the interesting parallels between this and the Gong arrangement, even though obviously it's not the same people and it's a different era. Yeah, any thoughts about this before we hear it?
I really love this tune. I love doing that band. It was a great band, and this whole album, The Unraveling, was a really big one for me. It was real sort of key. The lyrics were a really big deal because they were about Tim Smith of Cardiacs, who at that time was 6 years into his sort of, I talk of it as being a half-life in the song. That was very difficult for everybody around him to deal with, and for him as well. This goes into what I was talking about earlier about writing autobiographically. It's the first time I really sort of put it down quite explicitly that this was about Tim and about what had happened and how it felt, how sort of devastating it was.
With nautical imagery. It's still.
Do you know what? That's another thing. Going back to the romance of lyrics, I've always had nautical imagery in songs. I've done quite a few in Gong with nautical imagery as well, and with Knifeworld and my whole band. And I'd like to say it's because I grew up by the sea in Plymouth. Maybe that's got something to do with it. But I've never really been much of a sailor or anything. But there's something about the sea and about the fact it can be calm, it can be stormy. And I love the imagery of it, and I love a good nautical adventure. So it seemed like a very good analogy for what was going on with Tim. I'd recently met 4 years earlier, had met Chloe Herrington, the bassoonist, and she plays many instruments, not just bassoon, but I'd always wanted to have bassoon in a band. I was a massive fan of...
No bassoon in Monsoon Bassoon.
No bassoon in Monsoon Bassoon, exactly, but I always wanted a bassoon. There was a clarinet and sax and a flute, but no bassoon. But I was a huge fan of Lindsay Cooper, who played in Henry Cow, and Universe Zero had a bassoon, and also all that Mothers stuff, all those classic Mothers of Invention albums, particularly like Uncle Meat and Burnt Weenie Sandwich. You just sort of love that thick, woody bassoon sound. So as soon as I met Chloe and she played a bassoon, it was like, oh God, do you want to join my band that I'm putting together? I love writing that line that she plays. That's that line that she plays. That's just... I was going to say where I'm at. It's certainly where I was at in 2014. It was to hear that played over like you say, over this sort of like at time Beatles-esque descending chords and stuff. But to get to write that bassoon part and then to hear Chloe play it back was just magic.
So a real trip there. We got to a very high energy part toward the end, this very, personal, desperate, didn't know that you were never coming back again kind of. But we start off with this straightforward but let's use the rhythm to complicate that, that we're not going to start in with some sort of fast solo.
Yeah.
But then let's repeat it, and we've got a couple key changes right in that intro. And then repeat the whole thing with the bassoon on top of it. Yeah, say a little more about your construction of that very strange long intro.
That's kind of how I was writing songs back then. I'd written for years in the Monsoon Bassoon with my friend Dan Chudley. We'd written together always. When that sort of came to an end, I started working on... Well, Knifeworld started off as a solo thing, and it turned into a band. And I think I was just composing for exactly where I was at that period in my life, and trying to make the kind of music that I wanted to hear. I've been very influenced by Henry Cow and, Magma, but then also XTC and a British band called Madness, which I really liked, which was a 7-piece. What I loved about Madness is they would have these really sort of quite complex arrangements, not exactly sort of Gentle Giant level, but they would have these pop tunes, but with these exquisitely crafted arrangements going on with them. And particularly there's 2 albums which when I was growing up were a really big deal, one called The Rise and Fall and one called Keep Moving. And before I ever heard Cardiacs and stuff, I just really, that was getting my ears ready for the kind of stuff I would go on to listen to. So it's really sophisticatedly arranged pop music, but with modulation and middle bits and instrumental stuff. That all sort of feeds into where I was at that point in my life. I was in my sort of late 30s to... Knifeworld was sort of really between my late 30s to mid-40s. And I was able to have a band that could play these ideas that I was having, and we were into it. We were all living in London at that point, and we were all able to do it. It was quite a difficult band to do, and it didn't really survive. Once I joined Gong and things changed, it couldn't really survive. But for a period of time, it really worked with where we were all at. I loved writing these rich arrangements and these sort of intricately arranged parts and modulations and, whatever it was that Knifeworld did. What was kind of difficult about that band would be playing live, because we would spend all this time, it's a very rehearsal intensive band, and you spend all this time on these like woodwind parts, and the way the keys would sort of like lock in with what the bass was doing and the drums and all the vocal harmonies, and it would all, to me anyway, it all kind of worked very nicely. And then you put yourself into a live situation, and because of the level we were at as a band, we were never really able to have the finance to pay for someone just to mix us live all the time. So a lot of the time we'd find ourselves at the mercy of whoever was doing the sound at a venue. And you're talking about this 8-piece band, and some of which, some of the members are playing more than one instrument. And it's a mixture of electric and acoustic instruments, plus vocal harmonies, plus it's constantly changing in dynamics. It's not really like, it's kind of bass, guitar and drums, and everything else is just padding that out. It was like that every bit of the arrangement was just as important as the other. And you'd do a gig and you'd come off stage and people say, I couldn't hear the horns, I couldn't hear the vocals, and it was a lot to expect someone who's probably, a lot of the time they'd say, do you need some of that oboe in your monitor? They wouldn't even know it was a bassoon. And you're talking about a lot of instruments that to mic up and to get right. In the main, I found playing live a lot of the time very frustrating, because things would sound so good in rehearsal. And it can be really dispiriting, because you'd make a real big deal about a gig and a lot of people would come along. If we'd played badly, it would be another matter. But it was the fact that we would often play well, but we weren't able to present this vision I had for the band the way I'd like it to be presented. That could be very frustrating. I mean, some nights it would be brilliant. It was really hard, and I think had the band been a little bit bigger, had the economics worked to be able to do this sort of 8-piece band like that, it would have been very different. But once I'd expanded to include this 3-piece woodwind section, and I had that colour available to me, I just didn't want to go back. I didn't want to then go, okay, well, let's go back to just bass, guitar, drums and keyboard sort of thing. I really wanted to have this horn section. So that was kind of Knifeworld. I mean, there were so many brilliant things about doing that band, and I think I really grew as a composer and a performer and a sort of band leader. So the first time I really had to take care of all that side of it. It sort of prepared me for what happened next with Gong. We made 4 albums that I'm very, very proud of,
It's funny that you're referring to a horn section, a woodwind section, let's say. Right?
No, it's woodwind. I keep saying horn because it was sax. It was two saxes and a bassoon.
So that actually does sound like your piccolo trumpet or whatever, that blasting high note there.
It was mainly either bassoon, alto sax, and tenor.
Okay, so an alto sax can do pierce there, yeah.
Or else it was two altos and a tenor, depending on the track. But I think there might have been a bit of clarinet on that album because we had a player called Nicky who played clarinet on that record. God, I can't remember. It was 12 years ago or more.
All right, so I'm not going to go through all the different sections here. There are many, many, many of them.
Yeah, there are a lot.
I spent about a year of college listening almost solely to XTC that I discovered.
Oh, it'll do that, yeah.
And got really drawn in going through every single album. And I shouldn't have said Beatlesque because it definitely is Beatlesque by way of XTC. I could even hear, Colin Moulding singing that line. If it's a similar vocal tone that you're doing there. They
were my Beatles in as much as they were happening in real time for me. So I'm a huge lover of XTC. Andy Partridge's songwriting particularly, but I think his guitar playing and they're a band that really keeps on giving. And as a body of work, starting with White Music all the way through to the last album, Wasp Star, just think it's a really, really beautiful arc of extraordinarily well-realised music, and very exemplary songwriting.
Let me play a couple more chunks. So just this transition from the XTC-esque, right? XTC would never do that kind of wacky transition. That's a more Gong world or something.
I'm much more overtly prog.
Overtly,
than XTC,
yes. Vandergraaf, I get, with the sax stuff. I don't want to say it's easier or something, but just in terms of how there's not a large concern for making the verse just naturally flow. So a lot of songs, like the verse is just building up some tension and then it just releases in the chorus. But you add these little twists and turns to get there so that we go on more of a journey. A hypothesis that it seems like you could move these around, that there's a lot more decision making, that's less the song is writing itself and more that it is a composition, as you said before.
I mean, those ones, they were written in a very different way to say, at least the previous Gong album. Those were written with me here, just composing all the parts, working on them, changing bits around, altering the key, or maybe that goes, really, really thinking a great deal about these. Like, it's very much where I was at the time of making that. I was making exactly the kind of music I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted to hear at that point. Stuff that did this. I can't exactly remember why I would have come to the decisions, but the reason I come to any decision is if it has a charge, if it has a sort of fluorescence to it. If you do it and it makes you go, and it has a vibration to it, then you go, okay, that's the one. Mm-hmm. When it seems to have some sort of emotional jolt. And hearing that, particularly but what it goes into, going into that chorus, which is, to me, incredibly sad. It's just really it's an incredibly sad chorus.
It's a very triumphant musical gesture, that piercing thing.
But in a way, it's amplifying the sadness. It goes, even after all of that, even after this huge dive, you're still like having to deal with this friend of yours in this absolutely heartbreaking state. And it kind of amplifies it in a way. I mean, that's the beauty of music. You can't really explain it. Whatever it did, it felt like that's what I'm trying to say,
Well, I'm a big fan of depressing lyrics over jaunty music.
Clearly, yeah.
Let me play just so we could talk about the bass a little bit. I want to play some of the second verse.
Enlisted men hit the waves again. I can't adjust the rudder, man overboard.
The bass is fully as active as the guitar in that, right? The bass is not just holding it down. It's doing the arpeggio kind of parts with you. Yeah, what is your philosophy in working with bassists? Are you telling them what to do? Do you remember with this band?
In Knifeworld, I was writing the bass lines. I mean, you talk about Colin Moulding. He's my favourite bass player in terms of the way his bass lines work in any XTC song. And in fact, I'd say they're probably more interesting in Andy Partridge's tunes than in his own.
I interviewed him and he told me, I'm sure he said this elsewhere, but that he always insists on doing them last. So
Last,
the entire...
Now I do. As a result of that, not that particular interview, but reading him say that, I changed the way I work. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you should say that, because I'm just working on a record at the moment, as in like the last few days, and the treat at the end of doing it is to put the bass on, because you can totally change. It's almost like colouring the thing. You can change the colour of it. So no, Colin Moulding's my favourite bass player. He has my favourite bass lines. And I listened so much to XTC, but sometimes I just put them on and just listen to the bass, and it's a whole other tune. It's a whole other story going on there. So that kind of bass line that just has its own little story has really been a thing for me. And certainly in Knifeworld, I think that top line that the guitar's doing, I think I used to play that and sing it live. I think that it's kind of, that's real Beatlesy sort of doing. Yeah. I love the journey the bass goes on. I mean, it's kind of my favourite thing to compose a bass line, because you've done all the other stuff, so it's the lap of victory at the end, and it's the most fun thing, because you can really find something in the tune, and you can find something in your own tune, because I think of, like, you know, there's always a harmonic center moving around, and as soon as you put the bass on, you can change where that is, and you'll find note and go, well, I didn't think of it as being that, but if I do that this alters my own chord.
How does this translate to working with Dave in Gong, with a pre-established style? Are you suggesting things for him, or are you just, no, that's the Gong way, is your hands off?
I try not to, because Dave's got his own thing going on. Sometimes if he's not finding something, I might sing, oh, I've got this kind of thing, and then Cheb will often write the bass lines. He'll hear them as well. But more often than not, I mean, because the trouble is I will hear a bass line. I'll have a riff. And also, I don't want to be disrespectful, because Dave's a terrific player, Mm-hmm. So I, mainly will just sit there, and then if he finds something, if there's something, for example, that he's doing that I don't think works, one of us will say, or someone will say, look, this isn't working. But I know rhythmically, because of the way Cheb plays and the way where he puts his kick drum placement, he's often trying to get Dave to bring his bass lines into what he's doing, and it creates some really brilliant stuff. It is always such a counterpoint to the way I play, because I don't necessarily just kind of strum. I'm more of this kind of more like single notish, angular sort of player. And so those two then find these sort of really strange, I don't want to say strange, these really sort of rich tapestries behind it. Dave comes up with his own parts.
If I'm finger picking, then you can kind of play with your thumb the bass part that you want.
Yeah.
And then even if they don't cover it, well, it's in the song somewhere.
I'm so envious of. I'm so. Do you?
I mean, I'm not a great finger picking person, but like.
I can't do it. I can, and I'm so envious of those who can. I'm rarely an envious person, but boy, I'm 54 now, and I've been playing guitar since I was a kid, but I've just never, I think I get too impatient, but I'd love to be a finger picker, I
remember seeing Richard Thompson solo opening for Crowded House, and he was doing I can play any of my songs because I'm such a good finger picker that I can hold give you all the chords and the melody and the treble, but yet still hold something down with my thumb. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. I can...
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
Let me play one more. The spooky part I put for 249 here. I wanted to ask you about all these vocals layer, the whoa, 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 and the female vocals, and I can't even really tell what you're saying, because your actual lead line has a parallel octave and a bunch of phaser or something on it that's scooping it up. Any thought about that? It seems like the underwater section. I guess if this is a nautical thing. Yeah,
that's how it sounds. Yeah, the Ghost of the Sailors vibe. Yeah, I mean, I was making the kind of music I love to hear. That's what I wanted to hear. I loved, that's really where I was at. I probably still am at that. These sort of constant, all these different things going on at the same time, that these strange orbits that go around each other. I mean, that's what I love to hear.
Yeah, speaking of exactly that, so you've got a guitar solo that's actually you this time, and then you repeat it. Let me play it 4 minutes with a harp, something on top of it, just spinning out of control. Yeah, there's the fact you keep that going.
I'd forgotten about this. I love this bit. I used to love playing it live.
That's a little fast guitar part that you're doing over yourself.
Which one? Sing the bit.
There's some.
Oh, I think it's keys, isn't it?
Oh, okay. So that's the keys is being added.
I think it's a key part. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That would make sense unless you're overdubbing yourself a bunch of times. So
yeah, no, I think I'm doing an Ebo guitar doing I think if I remember. I love that bit. I love that whole instrumental bit. I remember when I wrote it, when we were doing it, thinking, this is, there it is. That's what I'm on about. Wow, it's funny hearing this. I haven't heard this for years, actually.
All right, then we need to cover the climax of the song. Then we keep going, although actually you kind of move it down in pitch and intensity. That was the climax.
Given that the song was about Tim Smith, but it keeps going up and up, that's a very Tim Smith thing to do. I think that would have been deliberate. I would have been sort of wanting to give this thing at least a flavour of Cardiacs and a flavour of Tim, because it's, it's completely about him. And that's when the lyric changes to stop being about this sort of using the nautical analogy and just being really direct and saying, this is exactly what happened on that last time that day, that fateful day. This is how it played out, getting that phone call and you not turning up at my place and thinking that he was going to, and that was it for him, sort of thing. And I think I probably injected a sort of Cardiacs trick into it.
Well, let's get the third song out there. I wanted something from your solo catalog, and I picked another long one, another journey, another one dealing with death. You Broke My Fall, from Hip to the Jag 2020. You want to say a little about this before we spin it?
So this one wrote itself very, very quickly. This one wrote itself in about 10 minutes, I think. And I had started to perform by myself. And the reason was, with Knifeworld being a sort of 8-piece band and with all the other members being very active musicians, it was very hard to get our calendars to coordinate. Sometimes we'd get offered a gig and not everyone could do it. Sometimes we'd get a dep, or sometimes we'd do it without a particular member, but I didn't like doing that. It did become quite wearing because there was really no money in Knifeworld, so everybody was doing it because they were just really into it, which was amazing. I feel extremely honoured to have played with these musicians who are prepared to do this,
and surrounding your music and not with a built-in audience. Yeah,
I just liked the idea of performing by myself, and it was terrifying to begin with. And when I first started, it really was just me and an acoustic guitar, and I was playing mainly Knifeworld songs, and I'd started to write a couple that I could do as well. But like I say, it was just me and an acoustic guitar, and I just early on, I must have only got about a handful of gigs under my belt. Early on, I thought, this looks too much like singer-songwriter. I don't know if this is the route I want to go down, just being guy with a guitar sort of thing. I wanted another element, and I thought, a harmonium will be nice. At first, I thought maybe a shruti box, and then I'd have a drone to play over. But I thought, no, I'd always liked a harmonium. A harmonium would be nice. Now, I'm not much of a keyboard player. I can play a little, but not much. When I record myself, I will either write very simple parts on the keyboards, or else I'll record the right hand first, and then I'll record the left hand separately, just to sort of be able to play it decently. So
I punch in measure by measure, so
that's exactly, you know it. But whatever it takes to get it sounding good, as long as the arrangement's good, I think. But what I really liked about the Indian harmonium is that it's hand pumped. So one hand is pumping it, of course, and so you've really only got the left hand to use. Well, that already makes the job 50% easier for me, because I'm not very good with the left-right coordination. So I had this harmonium, and within the first day I'd written 2 tunes. I'd written a long tune called Slow Movements, which is just sort of going with the sound of the harmonium, and the other one was I'd written You Broke My Fall, and it really was just a case of I think I even composed it in the order that the bits happen. I think I just played that first intro sort of chords, which had a really lovely atmosphere. Then I sort of sang a verse over it, and then I changed key and found a chorus, and the words just sort of fell out very, very quickly. I think I had those words in the first pass. Now, sometimes with lyrics, they can be excruciating. Sometimes it can take me days or weeks. I've got right in front of me the notebook. This is the notebook I've been using for the new Gong record and for my solo album. And getting to like Stars in Heaven, there's just pages and pages of me writing, just not finding it until for ages. But with this one, You Broke My Fall, the lyrics came out very quickly and they seemed so plaintive, but so sincere. It's the one song I perform probably almost every night with my soloist. I always end my set with it. I think it's quite an immediate song because I think the message and the meaning is very clear. It's not particularly ambiguous, and I think the chords and the melody are not too trying either. It's not really or at least it wasn't my style. I mean, you find a tune like that and you sort of cross a line because you think, gosh, this is a lot more almost, I don't want to say Leonard Cohen-y, but this feels a lot more straight than what I do. And although it does have a tritone in it at one point, but it feels a lot more straight. And I think that was a transitional period for me because I think the old me, which is the younger me, I think I almost felt some sort of self-imposed pressure to try and complicate things or to try and put in more bits or more complicated things. I think I'd felt like, oh, well, this is what I do. What I do is I'm the guy that does all this polyrhythmic stuff and constantly modulating or going from one meter to another. And I think it was a big deal doing You Broke My Fall and a couple of others on that album, Hip to the Jag, because I thought, actually, now I can write in this style and this still feels authentically me. It doesn't feel like it's a cop-out, and it doesn't feel like I'm deliberately trying to simplify my music. It felt just as authentically me as something like Send Him Seaworthy did. And in fact, I think Send Him Seaworthy was probably the beginning of a process which allowed me to do something as sort of plaintive and as open lyrically as You Broke My Fall, and to have the balls to do it, because I think I would have felt too self-conscious about writing something so unambiguous. I think I in the past I'd probably felt a bit self-conscious about it, whereas I don't now. I sort of feel like I'm able to. Maybe it's to do with being middle-aged and having more of a feeling of, well, what have I got to lose? I'm less critical about speaking my mind. And it has a very hymn-like quality, but here's one where I think I would love to hear this song covered. I think somebody could do a really lovely job with this song. I mean, I'm doing this one to the best of my ability. Most of my stuff, I wouldn't expect anyone to cover it or want to do it, but this is the one I thought, I'd love to have someone have a go at covering that one.
Well, usually I present these in reverse chronological order, but I felt like this one needed a little preparation. It's a full 7 minutes. So buckle in. It's not that there's that many sections. There are more sections than the previous song, but it just takes its time getting there. And it does have some movement. You talked about the souls of the dead crying. Well, we got the clanging of the chains in this song. You have a parallel thing. So here it goes.
The night is so much darker now that the burning ships have sailed, and when the dawn comes crashing in, will we see where we failed? Soldier, I'll lay down my arms and concede we lost the war. It'll give me a an excuse to drink now. I never needed one before to break my fall, to break my fall, to break my fall. So the songs I write just turn out sad, since the reaper took the reins. The friends I once made music with are now ghosts clanging their chains. They clang their chains. Inside my memory, where they never really died. These spirits keep me company at large. They're by my side. They're by my side. With this impossibility that we could all be here, the good times haven't ended yet. I swear that I'll keep you there. So I'll wrap my arms
A lot of movement. It was funny. I put this on auto repeat while I was doing some other things yesterday. And so I couldn't even, I couldn't even keep track of it, because it's not just like a linear, it starts quiet and then it gets loud and that's the end or something. It has ups and downs. And so it became this ever cycling. So I have an interesting relationship to this song now. Yeah. Can you say anything about the sort of dramatic progression through it? It
felt very sort of natural and unforced. Mm-hmm. I didn't really give it too much thought, because it kind of wrote it. I know it's a cliche to say it wrote itself, but it really arrived very, very quickly. It arrived in about, only in a few minutes. And then when I'd got there, I don't think it had any extra sections. I think it just arrived as that, and I think the lyric arrived as that. And it's one of those sort of lovely times where that happens. And I think that it's also something about having a new instrument. And it was, so I've just got this harmonium, and I was just playing on it, and this thing came out. And that will happen when you have a new instrument. I mean, even just get a new guitar, that's what happens. But for this, an instrument I wasn't used to. And I just got so excited when I'd written it, because I thought, boy, that's really got something. It's got a charge, So as for why I chose that movement, that's just what came out, and that's what felt right at the time. What would come next? Oh, this will come next. Here's the next section. Oh, here's the next section. Oh, then I'll do. I think there's a little bit of tinkering with the lyrics, but I think by and large the lyrics kind of came out very quickly as well. But like I say, I play it almost every night that I play live solo. I play this one, and I love playing it. It really feels like a sort of closure on the set. I think the sort of, I don't want to say message, but the lyrics they always feel like a nice ending point to sort of leave the audience on. I've never really thought about this, but I suppose it's not a million miles away from Stars in Heaven in terms of lyrics, and we get to experience this thing in these bodies this one time, and let's just remember, we're all going to die, but this is amazing that we're all here. And
is it just coincidence that I picked three very existentialist songs, Being Unto Death?
It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Okay, so
it's like all of that's my theme, I think. Yeah.
So you've got two verses, after you've established the intro for a while, two verses that just fall into each other. You kind of change up the vocal rhythms. But then we hit this tritone. So I'm going to play just before 2:11 where this happens.
Break my fall.
And we just sit there in a while. And this is like, I have a song that does something like this, but that's when it's entering the bridge. When it's like been and done, I guess you got your chorus here, to break my fall, insofar as that has a chorus. But then we're going to do this thing, and you're going to have this new really nice section. Yeah, so we'll say something about this. Again, you just say it just wrote itself, but is there anything in particular in terms of, now we're going to introduce this mellow little guitar plucking section after those verses?
The tritone's my chord. I remember, when I first heard it, really became aware of it. It's just got such a electricity to it. The tritone has such a magic to it. It's really psychedelic. I think it sounds like opening the door to another world. When the tritone appears, things aren't as they seem. Maybe the tritone is to me what the flashing lights were to David Lynch. It says something. The tritone's always been like a real draw for me. I used to use it a lot more when I was younger. I use it much more sparingly now, but I feel I have such a special relationship with that chord. It's really magical. Of just having two notes, it's the most magical combination of two notes. It really sounds otherworldly.
I'm actually forgetting what the electronic instrument that they use in the sci-fi films that you don't touch it.
A theremin.
A theremin. That you're getting this sort of theremin-esque, using an ebow or a slide or both.
Oh, that's glissando guitar, which brings it right back to Gong. That's the other guitar player in Gong, Fabio Golfetti, is the master of glissando guitar. I'm a mere novice, but it's playing the guitar with a metal rod. And you're sort of bowing it, and you play it up and down the neck. It was pioneered by David Allen. David Allen saw Syd Barrett at possibly the UFO or maybe Alexander Palace. But when David Allen first saw the Pink Floyd as they were in 1966, 67. Sid Barrett was playing his guitar with a Zippo lighter, and that's what inspired David. So he went and developed this glissando technique, which then Steve Hillage sort of expanded upon. Well, Fabio Golfetti expanded on it even further. David Allen and Steve Hillage said, and I concur, that, you know, he's the best glissando guitar player they've ever heard. It's not a style many guitarists do, but it's an incredible thing. The way Fabio will do it is he'll use the top three strings, the E, the B, and the G, and through angling it, he knows all the inversions for pretty much all the majors and minors. So he's really adept at, if you come up with a chord cycle, he'll match it with the glissando, and it just sounds absolutely angelic and heavenly. Now, the way I do it, I don't have that kind of a polyphonic way he does it. I just do it on the top string, the E, you know, with a bit of compression and a bit of delay. I can get that sort of, like you said, that theremin-y kind of sort of sound, which is really ghostly. And if, you know, and in the mix and everything, I think it sounds great, but I can't play like he does. He's a master.
It's funny. I'm just searching glissando guitar. The second result is a Fabio Golfetti interview.
Oh, there you go.
So I'll try to link folks to, you know, if there's a video demonstration, so they can get a little better idea of what's going on with that. There's also, it seemed like in the section after that, here, let me play 219, this very calming instrumental break section here. Sorry, it's not an instrumental break. It's just that you introduce some new instruments or reintroduce them before you start the second verse. Is that you have a very banjo sound to one of the guitars there?
Yeah, maybe. It's so long since I've heard this arrangement, the recording. Probably electric guitar or acoustic guitar. What's different about my solo stuff than, say, Knifeworld was that Knifeworld, I wrote the entire arrangement. By and large, you needed all those instruments in order to make the thing work. It wouldn't just be that the guitar, if you heard the guitar on its own, it wouldn't necessarily make sense of the tune. Whereas what I do with the, not exclusively, but mainly with the solo stuff, I'll write the song generally on guitar and voice or harmonium and voice. And I want the song to work. It has to work with just that. So it has to work as the way I do it live. And I'll record those parts first. When I want to make the record, I'll say in the case of that one, it was just harmonium and voice. So what I did is I just recorded myself singing and playing the harmonium just like I do it live. Once I'd got that, I built up the arrangement in the studio on top of that. But I knew that it could handle just being stripped down to just that. But I like the two alternatives. I like that live I do it one way, but I also like building up these nice arrangements on tunes as well and playing different instruments and what have you. So
we add a little bit of a tambourine and proceed through the second verse and clang the chains back to the creepy chord. And then I had a new pattern, the percussion such as it is. This is the most sort of Pink Floyd-esque part of the but
I suppose
that
so, yeah.
Bing, boom, boom, tick, bing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it is, yeah.
You're very light on percussion throughout your couple solo records.
My philosophy, or at least my guidelines with the solo stuff, is it has to just be stuff that I can play, and more often than not just stuff I've actually got. So on the one I'm working on, I've got a snare drum, I've got a ride cymbal, I've got a big bass drum, and I record them separately. I just record me playing the things, because although I could go and get a drummer to play it properly, it would turn it into something else. So I like the restriction of I have to be able to play everything, and I like the simplicity of the fact that because I'm not a particularly adept drummer in any way, I like the simplicity of just keeping down, like, okay, a ride that just does ta 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 all the way through, and maybe just a shaker that's shake, and then that's what I've got to play with. And I don't want to program drums, I don't want to get someone to play them, so I'm deliberately restricted by what I'm able to do. and the instruments and the arrangements. I've got lots of instruments around, but I don't play any of them, with possibly the exception of guitar. I don't play them in such a way that I would offer my talents, offer my abilities to someone else. But I can write a simple enough arrangement. You know what I mean? I can write a simple enough arrangement that, with all the other parts, I think it sounds nice. I think I write this a simple enough arrangement that you don't hear what an amateur I am.
Well, let me play the big shimmery instrumental. So a little bit after that, 420.
And locked inside my memory, where they never really.
It seems like the Monty Python heaven scene, you know.
Yes, it does. That's kind of the idea. That's you hear the glissando guitar going through that, a lot, yeah.
And yeah, you got some, like, I wrote tremolo wood block. I don't know exactly what you're playing, but like something fairly wooden that you're.
That's a kid's toy, just to think.
Okay, all right.
Whatever gives it the atmos, you know, whatever it gives it the right vibe. Sometimes it's like, oh, it needs something. I can hear something, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what it needs. And it's not always a musical thing. It's I'll bury funny little sounds on my recordings if it adds a vibe and an atmosphere. There's lots of stuff that if I were to take the tracks and solo a few things that are going on in there, they're really subliminal, but it's like, oh, okay, that's what that thing is, you know.
Well, and this is making me think, so the very beginning of Stars in Heaven, you've got some sort of, you know, some sort of synthesized swishing, and then some little backwards guitar or something like that. I mean, was that purely studio stuff, or do you try to do something like that live?
Dave made that. It did come in going, why would you care?
Yeah.
And for me, stylistically, what I wanted to do, I do think this is a very small category. There's a small category of songs that starts either straight in with the chorus or just straight in, no, not even a beat, straight in. I think there's like Help, the Beatles is Help, and it's straight in, you know. There's a song by Squeeze as well. I think it's Pulling Muscles from a Shell. There's straight in with the verse. And so I loved this idea of going straight in with this. But then Dave took some of the tracks and made that intro and said, oh, I want to do this. He did something that just sounded too Floydy to me. It sounded like something off Dark Side of the Moon, because he did it. I went, you know, home again, after he did it, or Breathe, whatever it is. But then he did this, and it's like, okay, well, that does sound cool. So live, I think the last few gigs he started triggering. It's only a few seconds. I think he's put it on the sample pad and started triggering it, and then we just count in behind it. I like the idea of having a song that's just bang straight in.
Well, you Broke My Fall. The intro of that has that Pink Floyd, let's set up the atmosphere. You know, I'm thinking of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, that lets itself, it's like 10 minutes letting it be set up before we finally roll in with a thing, as opposed to, I tried to do something like that in one of my tunes, but it's still like a 4-minute pop tune, basically. So like, okay, the guitar has a little lick and the keyboard has a little lick, but if they kind of just get it over really fast and then just get into I never have not had the patience or the 9-minute songs that you often do to really give yourself room to introduce these elements one by one, especially in a song like this where there aren't that many elements that come in. Like we just heard the climax, and that was you adding a couple children's toys and little percussion and a little higher and more ferocious on the lead guitar. Some of these are like the Knifeworld stuff is so arranged and so many pieces, and to try to do something that has just as much dramatic movement but with less pieces to deal with, I found that fascinating.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head. And as I said, because of the way it was written to be able to be performed with just voice and harmonium. So it had to be able to still have all that drama between those, just with a top line and chords, you know. Everything else was just an addition. All
right, well, to say goodbye here, we want to introduce the last thing, and we had a little back and forth about this. You know, you mentioned the Utopia Strong being one of the bands that it's you and 2 synth players. And
that's right, yeah.
And it's very atmospheric. It is entirely like the intro to Wish You Were Here often not ever getting to the actual song, right? Because it's just I didn't listen through all 4 of those albums in full. I will link people to the title track from Dope Rider, which was the one that you picked from that. It's very relaxing. We've already had some long songs here. So the thing that I was going to use is the intro, but I think it's just so good. I really want people to hear it. So Wise Guy by the Monsoon Bassoon, a 1998 single, eventually released on the I Dig Your Voodoo album, 1999. Especially the end of this, it was really energizing me. Can you say a little? I mean, you could say anything about any of these other projects before we say goodbye, but
I would talk about the Wise Guy, because that's really when the first time I fully thought, we got something now. You know, it was probably my mid-20s. I mean, I was always like really into whatever it was I was doing, you know, from being in a school band and writing tunes in my school band and then doing everything else. But when we did Wise Guy and when we got it together in rehearsal, it was this really exciting moment. I wrote a bit about this in my book, Medical Grade Music, which is sort of memoir. But it was a very magical time because we just came up with this thing. It's like, oh my God. And we all realized it. We kept playing this again and again between the 5 of us. And we were in our mid-20s sort of thing. And it was like this thing was bigger than us. We sort of couldn't believe that this thing had happened, you know, that we'd got this tune. So and it felt like a new bar for our band. And I remember, you know, we had a gig maybe that week or the following week, and we played it live, and all of our friends were there, and Tim Smith, I think Cardiacs, was probably doing our sound, and everyone was just like, bloody hell, that new song. So we knew we had something. In being part of having birthed this tune and watched it go from being something, coming up with a sort of basic idea in my bedroom and then working on it with Dan, who came up with some of the arrangements, and then taking it to the band and expanding into the tune that we eventually recorded with Tim Smith, and really going to town on the big, you know, all the big mad horns at the end, just really getting to properly use the studio, because up until then never really explored the possibilities of what a studio could do. But with a producer like Tim Smith, who obviously being a composer extraordinaire that he was in Cardiacs, he was very, very encouraging of us to go down this much more ostentatious and arranged section, and adding the hand claps and all these things that we really love, these stacked up horns and just really, really creating this big end section. And it was like, I'm even getting excited talking about it, because I remember what a big deal it was. It didn't matter whether we were going to be successful or not, although actually that song really caught a hold of a lot of people. I saw the New Musical Express single of the week. Well, the following on, the one after it was, actually. But they got really interested in us after we released that. And there was a local, well, I say local, there was a London radio station that had just started called XFM. And one of the shows was playing it every night for a week. So at this point, you know, our band was growing in a very small way. It's a full-on sort of DIY band, and this was the first time we'd really sort of put out a single and got any sort of exposure, and it was a really, really exciting time in my life. I'm so glad that ended up being the first single I put out, and not something I was doing 5 or 6 years earlier when I was like 19 or 20. I'm so glad that destiny waited until that was the first single, because I still feel immensely proud of it, and I still feel like we made a real statement with that. And honestly, I can trace everything I've done since back to that tune. I can hear the DNA of that tune in everything I've done since. It just opened up a possibility, as if I saw the potential of what I was able to do and what I was able to do, you know, collectively with a group, you know, what we could do. I feel immensely privileged to have been there to receive that tune when it arrived, because it's not to say that all the stuff we did before it I thought was great, but that this felt like this has sort of defined our band. And in a funny way, it's funny that Monsoon Bassoon's a very obscure band, but that's kind of the one that when people do remember us, you know, I mean, we have fans of that album, but people, you know, talk about that song a lot, and, you know, incredibly proud of it. All right, thanks so much for chatting. Thank you, it's been really fun. All right, here's Wise Guy. I'm in a hole, nothing I did, just go and dig, reach over past us a chair, shiver a hole, 1,000 ideas I'm gonna dig, so come on, pass us a chair. I'm in a hole, in the flashbulb, of clarity, where you can just see I saw 3 silver sixes, 3 silver sixes saw me in a hole in Full Garden.
Thanks so much to Kavus. He's got a really interesting catalog. One other project he was involved in that I found out about from his wiki page and asked him about after the interview was he recorded a whole unreleased album with Spider Stacy, the tin whistle player and current lead singer of the Pogues. So he's definitely not slotted into a prog ghetto or something like that. Seems like a very flexible guitarist, flexible musician. Gong is a band I've long been interested in and was despairing since David Allen had passed away. Oh no, I can't actually have anyone from that band on the show. In fact, I was pretty sure that the band didn't exist, but here it's existed all along. Apparently they toured the US last year, but I did not notice that. It is unlikely that they will tour again here anytime soon, he says. It's just economically infeasible, but we'll see. Again, to hear more of Kavus's music, just look on bandcamp.com at the pages for Gong, Knifeworld, and for Kavus Torabi. I will also link folks to the SoundCloud page run by his old bandmate Dan Chundley. Has a lot of Monsoon Bassoon, that heavy metal band they did together, Die Laughing, in the early 90s, other things. You can get the link to that, as well as links to a number of projects that Kavus has been involved in from the blog post associated with this at nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. Or as always, I must remind you that if you want to support the effort, you can go to patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. The feed you get from there will be entirely ad-free, and we'll link to my structural breakdowns of the songs that we've covered with the lyrics and everything. See all the points of interest that I maybe did not have time to bring up during the interview. Man, I have a lot of good guests booked. After Kavus, I spoke to British veteran singer-songwriter Bill Pritchard. And just yesterday, given that I am recording this right before its release, I talked to Alan Williams, who is a music professor at University of Massachusetts Lowell. He has albums going back through a few groups to the early 90s. Also, like Kavus, a big XTC fan, apparently. And I've got a bunch more lined up. I usually don't announce the guests until I actually talk to them, but I'm very excited. I've started prepping for my next one with first generation folky Tom Paxton. And one of the episodes after that is with Michael Timmons, the songwriter for Cowboy Junkies, who I just went and saw in Milwaukee last night. So I usually don't get to prepare in that particular way, but I'm very stoked for that one. Hope you're doing well, being creative. Keep on musicking. Until next time, this is Mark Wintermeyer signing off.